Hello and welcome to the City of Cedar Falls, Iowa Planning and Zoning Commission meeting for Wednesday, May 13th, 2026. I'll call the meeting to order. Can we have a roll call, please?
Fisher.
Here.
Grebevich. Hartley.
Here.
Henderson. Johnson.
Here.
Koger.
Here.
Mosier. Here. Stallnaker.
Here.
Watkins.
Here.
2 absent tonight.
Thank you. First on our agenda here is approval of minutes from the April 22nd meeting. Do I have a motion and a second?
I'd just like to mention that my name is misspelled in one of the items.
Okay, we'll make sure.
Other than that, with that change, I'll make a motion to approve.
Second.
So pending the adjustment, we have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, next on the agenda is time for public comments for anything that will not be covered later on. If there's anyone who would like to speak to an item not otherwise on the agenda, now would be the time. Don't believe I see any, so there is no new business tonight, so we will go right into old business. First up is a land use map amendment for 38.25 acres within West Viking Road Industrial Park from industrial to public utilities, and along with that, rezoning 48.37 acres within West Viking Road Industrial Park from the planned light industrial to public. And
Okay, I will go back over this. I know we went through this a little bit on the last meeting. We just give another overview here of the proposed rezoning. As just mentioned, it's 48.37 acres, includes the utility substation and the future site of the CFU power station. That's the area that's proposed for rezoning from M1P to public. The current zoning is M1P Planned Light Industrial District. The proposed zoning is Public Zoning District, which is a designation that's reserved only for governmental uses. Private uses such as cryptocurrency mining and other private uses would not be allowed in the public zone. So one of the criteria for rezoning is, does it match the future land use map? And of course, this area is all shown as an industrial area. So we would propose that in order to rezone the property, the designation on the future land use map should also be changed to public and utilities to indicate that this is a public use. The public and utilities designation on the future land use map is intended for public ownership of facilities that include public utilities, maintenance facilities, and public works yards. The comprehensive plan also recommends locating major public utilities in an industrial area. It notes that it should be well buffered from residential uses. So the appropriate designation for the future CFU power plant is really public because it is a public use. The CFU substation is already designated as a public and utilities use on the future land use map, so that doesn't need to be changed. So that's my brief description of what public zoning means and how this would comply with our zoning ordinance and the future land use map. So staff does recommend approval of LU 26-001, an amendment to the future land use map from industrial to public utilities for 38.25 acres within the West Viking Road Industrial Park, and rezoning the land from M1P to P, public. We recommend approval of that. Approximately 48.37 acres north of Technology Parkway and west of Innovation Drive from M1P Planned Light Industrial to P Public Zoning District. There were quite a few questions at the last meeting and a lot of public comments at the last meeting, so CFU is here to also give some answers to those questions, and so we have Susan here to make a presentation for the
Good afternoon. I'm Susan Abernathy, General Manager of Cedar Falls Utilities. Thanks for all your time and commitment to this process. I know that we've dumped a lot of information on you, and you received a lot of things in your packet, so my intent here is to go over some of that with you. This project is about ensuring reliable local service for our community while being a responsible and respectful neighbor. All that while keeping prices affordable for our customers in Cedar Falls. There are 3 prongs to this presentation. We want to establish how we're meeting the long-term reliability needs required to serve Cedar Falls. We're located and designed with community impacts in mind, and we're committed to ongoing coordination and transparency. We appreciate the Commission's role and the opportunity to provide you with additional information to assure you and the public that CFU has carefully and thoughtfully planned the Viking Energy Center so that we have reliable and affordable power for our community for generations to come. During the April 22nd meeting, commissioners expressed that they wanted a bit more detail about this project, so that's why I'm here again tonight. The Planning and Zoning Commission and the Cedar Falls Utilities Board of Trustees each have a very important role to play here with respect to this project. Both this commission and the CFU Board of Trustees are made up of citizen volunteers. Both governing bodies spend an incredible amount of time, not just in these meetings, but in all the preparation that goes into being fully educated to serve in your respective roles. So thank you for your time and service. Our community literally couldn't function without what you do here today in ensuring that there's proper planning of our zoning districts. With respect to the Viking Energy Center, the P&Z Commission and the CFU Board of Trustees each have complementary roles to play, that being planning and zoning with respect to proper zoning, and the Board of Trustees operates our utility. As we've repeated many, many times, planning for this project has been underway for years. It's all been conducted in the context of public meetings. There's been nothing done in secret. It's been communicated to our customers through Waterloo Courier articles, social media, the rate letters people get every November, our annual report for the last 2 years, as well as our website. Analyzing our current generation portfolio, coordinating with our grid operator, MISO, you heard me talk about that at the last meeting, that's the Mid-Continent Independent System Operator, keeping up with technological advancements and balancing this all with proper financial management is highly complex. As we will discuss throughout this presentation, planning our generation portfolio requires consideration of factors such as peak load, energy market, generation capacity factors, planning reserve margins, and many other unique utility industry concepts. With all due respect, it's much more complicated than planning community parks or even roundabouts, as we as a utility are required to provide life-saving services for our community and comply with the requirements of our grid operator, MISO, which consists of literally an 8,000-page tariff that we have to comply with. Our goal with this project is to balance system reliability with our obligation to be a good neighbor. This step tonight is to ensure that the land is properly zoned as public for the project. The project itself and what it entails will continue to be discussed in public meetings. Our process for gaining further approval of this project will happen with a different venue and in a different governing body. That's the Iowa Utilities Commission. In that context, there will be community-wide meetings where the public will have further opportunities for input. The Iowa Utilities Commission is the entity that decides whether this generation and the particular details of it are appropriate for the larger grid in Iowa. So while this commission must properly decide appropriate zoning for the land, it's important to note that the city's comprehensive plan recommends whenever possible to locate public utilities in the industrial area. The local Cedar Falls Utilities Board of Trustees operates the utilities under Iowa Code Chapter 388, and it is for another regulatory body, as I mentioned, the Iowa Utilities Commission, to review and approve the generation at this location once you've approved the zoning. We appreciate your role as a partner in this process. You have a lot of information in your pocket because it's really, really difficult for me to explain all this in just a few slides. It's a complicated industry, and it's a project that requires a lot of detail. Recognizing that really the only issue before you today is the proper zoning of that land. I'll only speak to some of the highlights, and I'll answer, of course, any questions from the last meeting. Certainly, if you want me to go into any detail with any of the slides that I happen to gloss over or skip over, by all means let me know, because seriously I could talk about this all day. But I want to be respectful of the different roles, but I also wanted to give you, a larger context to what all has been involved with this project. So what does this look like for Cedar Falls utilities and our future generation planning? We have focused upon the importance of local control that cannot be emphasized enough, while also facilitating generation that actually supports renewable energy on the larger grid and also effectively keeps electricity bills low. This is the perfect trifecta of priorities and why the Viking Energy Center is the optimal generation project for Cedar Falls. We went over a lot of those community benefits of the Viking Energy Center a few weeks ago, so I'm not going to repeat all those, but happy to go through them again. So talking about why this particular generation project is important and why it's needed. Let's see if I can here. Okay, so I don't have a laser pointer, so we're using the cursor here. So this lighter blue area is what consists of MISO. I talk about our grid operator. So it's the only ISO that operates from coast to coast, Manitoba all the way down to the Gulf. And so you can see where Iowa is there in the MISO territory. This is simply our electric grid. It's an organization. The grid operator is tasked with keeping the lights on and operating the energy and those capacity markets. Like I said, the tariff is literally actually 7,987 pages, and that's filed with FERC, which is the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission. And that's the federal agency charged with ensuring that our country has reliable, safe, secure, and economically efficient energy. Okay, so one thing that I really want to highlight here that's important for everybody to understand on why this project is necessary is that there's two requirements within MISO that we must meet with our generation, and those concepts are capacity and energy. Capacity is the concept that CFU must have access to instantaneous load to serve that. So each load-serving entity, that's CFU, other utilities, must own and have under contract peak generating capacity. Fuel-based systems that are pretty stable, actually I'm on the wrong slide here, sorry about that. So capacity is essentially the generation we own, and we must have enough to serve our peak load. That's about 100 megawatts of peak load. That doesn't include crypto mining because we don't have to buy capacity for crypto. Energy is actually the usable power over time, so that's measured in kilowatt hours, and that's what you will see on your bill and what you pay for. CFU has to have enough capacity and energy to comply with the MISO tariff. The environmental groups want to only focus on the nature of CFU's own generation, but this ignores all the details of the capacity market and how it actually functions. I'm going to go into this further, but I just, to kind of, in the interest of keeping things moving along, an easy way to think about capacity versus energy is to think about a parking lot. So if this parking lot had 100 spots to represent each being a megawatt, CFU would have to have 100 spots in its parking lot. We have to have access to 100 megawatts of generation. We have to be able to prove that we can fire up that generation whenever necessary. And then the energy is what is actually used. So when you turn on your lights or use electricity, you're a car that's being parked in one of those parking spots. So this varies throughout the day depending upon whether people are sleeping, whether they're home, whether they're working. And MISO energy market works to operate that in terms of we have to say, hey, we've got generation available to power up for X amount per megawatt hour. Oh, and we also need, we think, X amount of megawatts for the next day based upon the weather and the season and what we think that our community is going to be using. I will go through all these graphs if necessary, but I'm going to skip ahead to what Iowa energy production looks like. So this is a great story on Iowa's renewable power. Iowa energy production in 2010, you can see, was 72% coal, and the green is natural gas. And then you can compare that to 2025, where you can see the 59% of wind. So this is a great story. These are, you can see that wind is, we can take advantage of wind. Mid-American, NextEra, and most recently Alliant Energy have taken advantage of production and investment tax credits. Municipal utilities can't do that because we're not a taxable entity. So CFU can take advantage, and we're much better off by buying the power off the grid. We can take advantage of the renewable power when it's available, and this is a huge success story for us, and it saves our customers money. We can buy energy, the wind market, when it's available, and we don't save any money by building a bunch of wind ourselves because we don't have access to those tax credits and tax incentives. This is the same information on a bar graph that tells you the story from year to year. So you can see how coal has drastically decreased to 2025 and how wind has overtaken that. The other thing I want to point out for you is to look at, see if I can show it on my, there we go. So look at here in 22 and 23, where 22 wind was high, natural gas was low. Moving to 2023, wind dipped down in production, so guess what had to modulate and compensate for that? Natural gas. So the fact remains that wind isn't always available. We still need fuel-based generation to fill in the gaps when it's not. So this is another great story on Iowa energy versus Iowa capacity, and we need to comply with both of those concepts for MISO. If you look at the graph on the left, it's the same graph I showed you before where there's 59% wind. So the graph on the left, that's what actually reaches your home. That's what reaches your business. That's how the electricity you get is produced. The graph on the right is what keeps your home, your business reliably and affordably powered. It's literally what keeps you safe, because when there is no wind available, we need something to fill in those gaps, and we have to have both. I want to talk about the reciprocating engine technology and why we chose this particular type of technology. First of all, I can't emphasize enough how much more efficient it is than our aging infrastructure that we have right now. Reciprocating engines are highly efficient. They're 50% more efficient than old coal-fired plants, and they have state-of-the-art emissions controls. Depending on what you're measuring, they have 60 to 99% reduction in emissions compared to coal. And let's also keep in mind the reality is that the transportation sector is responsible for more emissions than power generation. These engines are fast starting. Unlike Streeter Station, I think I talked about this at the last meeting, that it takes 12 hours for it to even be warmed up, fired up, and ready to produce electricity. This is what's so great about this technology, is the wind is very erratic and not predictable. So when the wind quits blowing, you need something to kick in right away, and that's how these reciprocating engines fill in those gaps. It also has a lot of throttle range, so it's not an all or nothing. It's a 37 megawatts between the two engines, but they can operate from 10% to 100% load at a reasonable heat rate. Finally, it's dual fuel and renewable capable. So right now it'll be natural gas with a fuel oil backup. In the future, these engines can be modified to compensate or to burn hydrogen or any other kind of renewable fuel. That is one of the things we looked at when we were looking at the different types of engines. We wanted to be sure that it provided us with that flexibility. Natural gas is a widely used technology, and it's much, much cleaner than coal. Utilities across the Midwest are planning or installing new natural gas. Again, the market is highly renewable, and what other utilities are doing as well to support those renewables and to make sure the lights stay on is using fuel-based generation for reliability. So the purpose of these engines will be to serve as reliable backup power for high demand periods. The Viking Energy Center will provide us with resiliency and reliability. Renewable resources like wind and solar are essential and growing, but they're variable and dependent upon weather conditions. Until long-duration energy storage batteries and other technologies are widely available and affordable, fuel-based generation remains necessary to ensure power is available during extreme weather and peak demand. We're preparing for the future by maintaining critical generation and reinvesting in new, flexible power sources that can respond quickly to changes in the renewable output, ensure power is available when it's needed most. We emphasize how important it is to have local control of our generation. Quite frankly, it'd be difficult to site enough wind turbines in our community. It'd be impossible to site wind turbines in our community. And wind turbines outside of our community are of absolutely no help when we need local generation. Our review of the MISO market and the different weather patterns and market conditions illustrate that Viking Energy Center is necessary. Renewables are great when they're available, but the market recognizes that they're usually the first energy to be dispatched by our customers, for our customers. So when the wind is available, that's what we use. When it's not, we need something different. And if you humor me, I want to back up to one of these slides that really highlights for you why this is so important. Okay, so this is January 23rd through the 30th, Winter Storm Fern. So the line on the top, which is like light blue, that's the load. That's what people are using for energy. The other blue line that dips down and then up and mostly down, that's wind production. And then the red bar graphs is the price of energy. Okay? So that's what that looked like for 7-8 days. You'll notice that the renewables dropped to very low for 40+ hours. Wind was gone for 2 days during this winter storm. And this drop coincides with extremely cold weather and also high natural gas prices. Here's where the Viking Energy Center comes into play. If you see the purple line, that's the price that it would cost to operate Viking Energy Center based on the specs of the engines that we've ordered. So we can operate Viking Energy Center throughout that winter storm and operate as basically a price cap. If we do not have Viking Energy Center and we were just beholden to entirely renewables, which are not available during an event like Winter Storm Fern, we're buying energy off the market for all of you, our customers. And the erratic red bar graph, that's what you're paying. So Viking Energy Center would be able to operate throughout that storm and operate as a price cap. So you can see how it in real time, how it not only ensures reliability and that people are safe, but it saves a lot of money. Not only do we have winter storms like Fern, but when the wind is not blowing or when the larger grid endures a derecho or a tornado that decimates transmission lines, the result would be that our community is literally stranded. Having acres and acres of solar will not sustain this community for Winter Storm Fern events. Solar and wind will not support this community during a derecho event, when we have days and days of very little renewables and not enough battery capacity to power us through those events. These types of events can last for days. When Cedar Rapids suffered a derecho in 2020, I had friends in Cedar Rapids served by Alliant who were without power for literally 11 days. Thankfully, it was the summertime and it wasn't winter, and they also said they were glad that they had a natural gas water heater so that they at least had hot water. If this type of event occurs in the winter and we're relying on 100% renewable, it's catastrophic. People literally die in those types of events. So that's why we need the Viking Energy Center. That's why we need local generation. What will sustain Cedar Falls in these disasters? The Viking Energy Center that also has a black start capability. That means that these engines are able to restart the grid without any external power source. That is a huge deal. We'll be able to be island and totally powered up when transmission goes down or we have catastrophic weather events. Furthermore, Cedar Falls Utilities is 80% underground. You'll notice a lot of our distribution lines are being moved underground. That also provides a tremendous amount of reliability to our local island here, our local community, because we're not subject to weather events like other communities are. There were some questions on location and how we came up with this particular site, and that is a totally fair question. So I'd like to give you some background on that. When we were analyzing different options, these are the factors that we required. It had to have access to the electric transmission system, needed to be out of the floodplain, which is where Cedar Falls Utilities' main campus is right now. We're protected by a flood wall, which isn't a great feeling. We needed substation access. We needed access to natural gas infrastructure. We needed a large plot of land, a place to grow, and then we also were looking for an industrial location. So let me walk you through some of those options that we looked at and how they compared to these factors that were required. We thought about Cedar Station location, where we are right now. We all remember the floods of 2008, and while the flood wall's been raised, it's too risky to put such a expensive and critical generation infrastructure behind a flood wall. Furthermore, it likely required demolition of existing buildings, and we'd have to upgrade our gas system at this location to accommodate the needed gas capacity. Also, that current location is very close to a residential area. Another location we looked at was where our gas turbines are on West 27th Street, which is across the road from Cedar Falls High School. There's security risk with siting, generation, and transmission in such a high traffic area next to a high school. The Viking Energy Center is simply better suited in an industrial location where there's lower traffic. There's also not enough land at that location, and we would need transmission and substation upgrades at that location. Another parcel that we considered was the North Industrial Park. We would need a lot of things in the North Industrial Park. It has the advantage of being away from a lot of people. There's a lot of NIMBY, not in my backyard, I don't want it near me. Well, first of all, it's not fair to the people in North Cedar. There's always going to be somebody who's impacted by these kinds of things. But in the industrial park, North Industrial Park, we need transmission, we need substation, we need gas system upgrades, and those system upgrades alone are absolutely cost prohibitive. This location in the industrial park is the best location by a wide margin, and any other location in our territory would have operational concerns and add significant expense. As I stated before, the city's comprehensive plan recommends, whenever possible, that public utilities need to be located in industrial areas. And I mentioned at the last meeting, this location in the industrial park is very likely the center of our community in the future, much like the current CFU campus was once upon a time. I mentioned that it needed to have, whatever location it was, would need to have access to transmission and be near substations. Nobody likes these things. These are transmission lines. And if we would site this somewhere else in the community, it's highly likely you're going to have very high voltage transmission lines that are clunky and awkward, and nobody likes them all across town. We showed you this rendition at our last meeting. We will fit into the character of the existing industrial park. We heard all the concerns with noise, and we know that is a legitimate concern of residents. We're making investments to make sure that we are well below the threshold. We'll continue to work with our consultants and learn from other plants. We'll continue to evaluate mitigation methods, including enclosures, barriers, landscaping, setbacks, as well as building materials that will be engineered to contain the sound. We've met with the neighbors and will continue to do so in a way to address their questions and their concerns. The bottom line is we have really old generation, 50, 60 years old, in particular Cedar Station Units 6 and 7, that provide really valuable capacity for our community. And again, we need capacity and energy. Right now, we have no choice but to keep them operational in order to meet our MISO-dictated capacity requirements. This project has been carefully and thoughtfully planned, discussed, considered by the community's Board of Trustees and CFU professional staff, and we've met with citizens and answered their questions. In conclusion, the Viking Energy Center replaces aging, inefficient generation. When this operates, it's not replacing renewables. It's replacing older, much more inefficient fossil-fueled generation. It supplements and complements the renewables. It doesn't replace them. This community must have reliable, affordable, and sustainable power on a local level so that we can maintain our grid here in Cedar Falls. As you could tell from my packet, there's so much more here, keeping in mind that really the only topic is proper zoning. I'm going to leave you with this and allow others to speak. But anything that comes out in public comment, I'd like the opportunity to come up and answer any questions or provide additional context to any topics that may come up. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any immediate questions from the commission for either staff or CFU?
I do have a question. I'm sorry, I'm probably going to make you get up again. I was curious when you talked about the engines and how they can be converted to use renewable energy in the future. Could you maybe speak to that a little bit and how that works?
Well, it's just like, put it this way, your car works on, regular gasoline, unleaded. And let's say you wanted to move to, diesel or something else, there'd be a way to mechanically change that engine to modulate to a different fuel. So I'm not an engineer, I don't know exactly.
Sure.
All
I know that's a complicated
they're capable of being converted to burning a different type of fuel. And that was a terrible example. Nobody wants to burn diesel, but I was trying to think of a metaphor for you on how that would work.
Okay.
But, Tom Reese, our project manager, is here. He was the one who procured these engines. So if you really want to get into the weeds on that, I'm sure he'd be happy to.
Sure, yeah. I think that's an important point. So
yeah, absolutely.
Thank you.
Yep. There are engines that are not capable of that, and we passed those over. So.
I do have a question. I'm not sure if it's for you or for Karen maybe, but I just want to make sure I understand. So, and I'm going to go back to crypto for a second. So the reason why we had crypto allowed at Cedar was because that was not zoned as public at that point in time. Is that correct?
We did not, at the time those original permits came in, we did not consider it a principal use. They were small little boxes that were on the CFU property. We permitted those as accessory buildings. So once we knew more about it and knew and realized that we should really be treating that as a principal use, that's why we came forward with saying if we're going to allow this in the future and going to be a larger scale, we really need to put something in the zoning ordinance to allow it as a principal use.
Great. And then so just so everyone else is clear, so now that this would be zoned as public, so that would never be an option on this new site.
Right. The zoning designation is solely for public uses.
Yep. Thank you.
Any other commission questions for right now? Okay, thank you very much. At this time, then, we would like to open it up for any public comment, and I would just ask, we have several people in the room, and so in the interest of time, if everyone could try and keep their comments to 5 minutes or so, that would be great. And otherwise, if you're ready, come on up and name and address for the record, please.
Hello. Thank you for giving me time to come and speak with you for a few minutes this evening. My name is Craig Johnson. I've been a resident of Cedar Falls since 1979. My wife Anita and I have raised 3 children in the city, and we love living here. I'm here this evening to make a few comments to support CFU's Next Generation Energy project. My background includes serving as a CFU trustee from 2015 to 2021. I'm a meteorologist with expertise in weather analysis and forecasting. My career includes 30 years as a weather forecaster for broadcast media, 20 years working with scientists and science educators, and I've made forecasts for the U.S. Forest Service Fire Weather Program, a weather consulting company, utilities, and for many other weather-sensitive activities. Those experiences helped me a lot when serving as a trustee at CFU. My message to you is that CFU has the experts who understand what is necessary to build a power generation plant that is reliable, cost-effective, and environmentally friendly as much as the technology allows. They also know where to locate it best to take advantage of what makes it most efficient. CFU's plan to upgrade its electric power generation facility was being discussed before I joined the board of CFU in 2015. That means it has been studied for more than a decade. Every facet of the decision process has been fully considered. I'm aware of the concern being expressed about using natural gas rather than renewable energy. It is a critical issue. Wind and solar energy are low-density fuels that require considerable acreage, even square miles of land, to power a city the size of Cedar Falls. They are also intermittent fuels that fluctuate on time scales of seconds, minutes, hours, and days. Electric power needs to be steady while exactly matching the demand. Wind and solar power generation is controlled by the weather, sunrise, and sunset, not CFU. Iowa weather varies greatly. Light or calm winds can exist for days, and clouds can cover the sun for longer periods. When you hear that Iowa gets 60% of its power or so from wind, keep in mind that the energy generated by renewables can be less than expected and sometimes even zero. Iowa wind power is currently backed up by coal and natural gas. If it wasn't, our power would have a high risk of failing on a regular basis. We are already being warned about possible power outages as power demand increases on the grid and more renewables are added to the grid. One aspect of wind energy is the effect turbines have on grain yields. I've studied a crop yield map in Iowa where an area around a wind turbine had only 62 bushels per acre of corn harvested, while surrounding areas were at 200 bushels per acre. Other farmers with turbines on their land are seeing similar problems. There are more than 3,000 turbines in Iowa, which suggests that may be a widespread problem. I understand the concerns about climate change that paint a scary scenario. The messaging comes from the most pessimistic scenarios that are now being rejected by scientists as not being plausible. It does not come down to being scientific evidence. There are far more scientists who disagree with the climate catastrophe narrative than you may imagine. A quote from scientist Stephen Koonin, a well-respected theoretical physicist, says that a scientist modeler told him that climate models were not fit for purpose. I have used weather forecast models for the past 50 years. They are helpful tools when they stay in their lane. But they become also unfit for purpose because weather models eventually get out of their lane. Climate models also get out of their lane. The truth is, weather and climate models have fundamental problems that limit their effectiveness, and people that try to make these models say more than they do create confusion. Climate models are not the final word in science or in climate science, especially when they are based on scary scenarios that are now being rejected by scientists, as I said, as not being plausible scenarios. CFU's next generation energy solution is what Cedar Falls needs for a reliable energy generation future. It will be reliable, cost-effective, and is a cleaner fuel. It has a small footprint that will be placed in an ideal location. It will be power that Cedar Falls can count on for being there when it is needed. Thank you for considering my comments.
Thank you.
Okay.
Is there anyone else from the public who would like to speak to this item tonight?
Good afternoon. My name is Maribeth Sonneson, 2204 Sunnyside Drive in Cedar Falls. I currently serve as the chair for the Cedar Falls Utility Board of Trustees. I'd like to offer some additional context about the planned Viking Energy Center. At first, implementing a new power plant that uses natural gas seems very counterintuitive to us. If it strikes you the same, we understand. To back up a bit, the Board of Trustees in 2020 held work sessions to discuss our responsibility as a power producer and carbon emitter. The result was the unanimous adoption of the IPCC global goal of a 45% reduction in carbon emissions from 2010 levels by 2030 and a net carbon operation by 2050. Each year, that goal is reaffirmed through CFU's annual strategic planning process. CFU operations are on track to meet the 2030 portion of that goal. From 2020 to 2022, the City of Cedar Falls undertook a comprehensive community conversation to develop a citywide resilience plan. CFU was a key participant and integrated the outcomes into ongoing planning and operations. The point here is to articulate CFU's commitment to sustainability, reflection of community values, and its firm direction toward a carbon-neutral future. After establishing the net zero carbon target, staff and board assessed and continues to assess the drivers of demand, current technologies, and other externalities. It was clear that our generating fleet of coal and old gas plants, aged, inefficient, and emissions-laden, will not take us forward. What may have been a good decision in 1963 to build Streator 6, or as recently as 2007 to invest in Walter Scott 4, is not the future. The status quo was not an option. Some of the criteria for evaluating potential changes included reliability factors, keeping the lights on, financial feasibility, emissions impact, grid compatibility, dispatchability, capacity integrity, and local risk management ability. Energy efficiency programs, while essential, will not solve the problem alone. Even if everyone did their very best to consistently reduce electricity use, it would not come close to replacing one of our existing coal or gas plants. Wind energy, abundant in Iowa, it passes the emissions criteria. However, wind challenges reliability due to its intermittency and requires daily backup. Plus, we can buy wind energy cheaper than we can own or make it. Solar energy options were reviewed. It, too, passes the emissions test and is grid compatible. But sun, like wind, is intermittent and requires backup. There is a role for solar, but a better backup plan is needed prior to adding solar. Batteries and energy storage are promising, but long durations are simply not ready yet. There are exciting experiments going on with iron ore batteries, molten salt, other energy storage methods. CFU constantly monitors these technologies. Outside voices hype the fact that 99% of CFU-owned generation is fossil fuel-based. While true, it is not the whole story. It is incorrect to conflate ownership with what is being delivered. Because of CFU's participation in the grid, it buys and delivers 61% renewable power. These outside voices are misleading. Iowa is 61% powered by renewables, but what happens the other 39% of the time? Every day requires backup. Iowa has yet to experience 24 hours powered by renewables only. The power gap is generally covered by traditional gas and old coal plants. Coal plants require 8 to 20 hours for startup and are often left to run rather than shutting them down. Rife with emissions, coal is simply not a compatible backup for renewable generation. This situation exists not because there's a lack of investment in turbines or panels, but because both wind and solar are weather dependent and inherently intermittent. CFU is mindful that being in the power industry has big responsibilities. Power generation of all types has societal costs, whether it's the byproducts of gas and coal extraction, lithium mining for batteries, foreign labor practices, solar panel materials, hydro installations, biomass burning, or the recycling of wind turbine parts. It's essential that the natural gas that we do use is done in the most efficient, miserly manner. The conversation is not about whether to do wind or solar, but what is the most impactful action for reducing emissions in our current context. The most impactful action is to reduce and eliminate coal usage. The most effective way to reduce and eliminate coal is to make coal power irrelevant by backing up the 39% with better options. The Viking Energy Center does just that. In fact, the Viking Energy Center reduces harmful emissions in 5 important ways. The Viking Energy Center displaces coal as a fuel. Natural gas is still a fossil fuel, but not nearly as bad. CO2 emissions are high for coal, but 50 to 60% less with natural gas. Sulfur dioxide emissions are high for coal, but negligible with gas. Nitrous oxide emissions are high for coal, but 80% less with gas. Particulate emissions are high for coal, but negligible with gas. The VEC technology has dramatically better efficiencies, from 18% at our old gas plants to 50% at the VEC. Less fuel burned, less emissions produced. The Viking Center's quick startability eliminates the massive waste inherent in coal plants. Plus, unlike some coal plants, the VEC will not run all of the time, only when needed. Once commercially available, the VEC's life is extended by converting to a renewable future fuel, further eliminating emissions. And finally, once commercially available, the VEC has the potential for centralized carbon capture, again reducing emissions. In conclusion, solving today's power problem of sustainability is not as simple as just adding more wind, solar, or batteries. We're in a 3-dimensional chess game, not a simple game of checkers. The Viking Energy Center, first appearing as a counterintuitive proposal, has emerged as the best next step for us. The board unequivocally supports the recommendation for the Viking Energy Center. We believe that it is the most sustainable choice in this moment for CFU. The Viking Energy Center fits squarely on a solid carbon reduction pathway while enabling existing and future renewable resources. There will be several major power projects that CFU will need to implement prior to 2050. The Viking Energy Center is a solid first step for reducing emissions immediately and will provide a strong foundation for supporting the next transitions ahead. Thank you.
Thank you.
If I could, I did bring a handout. Is that possible to distribute it to you?
Materials?
Yeah.
How many copies do you have?
I think I have 12.
Sure, we'd grab those. Just want to make sure there's one for each of us.
Thank you.
You can take it, just pass it down.
Thanks. Thank you.
So there are a couple things, and I will try to keep this within 5 minutes. I do want to correct one thing. Obviously being, one of the most directly impacted, in fact, probably the most directly impacted, until the other day, I didn't know who she was, Ms. Abernathy. So as far as I know, nobody's talked to me. So neighbor involvement, there hasn't been any. Certainly not from my family. And we would have been very happy, of course, to talk to anybody. So I do want to emphasize that, because that is not correct. As far as the Viking Energy Center, the truth of the matter is, I do understand that, of course, Cedar Falls does need to upgrade its systems. And, of course, making sure that the grid is stable is absolutely, positively the priority. However, I also want to point out a couple of things. The environment in terms of energy is changing very, very quickly. And they're talking about wind and solar. What they're not talking about, of course, is actually energy storage. Now, we could have a discussion about this literally all night. In fact, right now with my ecology students, we are looking at energy systems, production, and storage. Energy storage is something that what we're seeing right now is a 27% year-on-year decrease in terms of costs, and the improvements in technology are absolutely staggering at this point. For instance, something like iron air has been mentioned. The fact is, Form Energy, which is the maker of iron air, at least in this country, is just completing a $700 million factory out in West Virginia. Iron air batteries are being implemented, not on a pilot basis, but actually implemented with utilities as well as on other projects, including an extraordinarily large Google data center up in Minnesota. The truth of the matter is, energy storage should absolutely 100% be part of the Viking Energy Center at this point. The truth, I think, that they haven't let you know is, okay, they've been planning this for a long time. That's fine, I definitely appreciate that. But the truth is that this should have been built back in 2010, at the latest 2015, when natural gas was eating coal. Right now, in fact, what you are seeing is a new shift in terms of energy production as well as storage. The storage, I know that when you say batteries, everybody's thinking about the battery in your cell phone or whatnot, but we're talking about industrial level lithium ion, iron air. Sodium ion is coming. It is being commercialized, and not in pilot projects, but actually it is currently beginning to be implemented in, I guess you might say it, real situations, including, I think last time mentioned, in Wisconsin as well as Colorado. So if Cedar Falls Utilities right now is ignoring energy storage, that is a problem for them. And looking at this particular project, they are going to wind up, right now it's at about 78 million. That's up from, I think, originally 62 million. I'm just trying to remember off the top of my head, having looked at this. And by the time it gets built, there will be obviously more cost overrun as well. I would suspect that maybe we're looking at something that is more 85 to 90 million. So, taking into account that we're looking at something that will be paid off over 20 to 30 years, considering how fast energy production and energy storage, and I want to emphasize storage, is developing, costs are falling, technology is getting better, well, it is going to be a stranded asset before it can be paid off. And Cedar Falls is going to have to bear that. The ratepayers are going to have to bear that. What I've given you is just a summary of the analysis. I do have a much longer analysis of this, actually looking at the different scenarios. And as you can see, one of them is a projection, but the others are very concrete. I think at this point, Cedar Falls Utilities really needs to take a look at the future and where it's going. Like I said, had this been back in 2010 or 2015, yeah, it's a project that should have been green lighted. 2026 is not then. Technology is absolutely, changing at a mind-boggling rate. And as far as the zoning, I would say that until Cedar Falls Utilities has actually demonstrated that they have a workable plan going from here into the future, that this should be held up. And I don't think they have actually demonstrated that. They've demonstrated that they have a plan for 2010, but they don't have a plan that takes them through 2050. Natural gas does need to be a part of this. That's indisputable. But it's not going, or it's something that will be phased out, and it will be phased out relatively quickly, probably within the next 10 years. That's not what this is designed for. As far as public comment and whatnot on this, 2 o'clock on every second Wednesday of the month. Sorry, at 2 o'clock, I'm actually working. I have actually looked into this a couple times. Somebody like me, I'd really like to participate in something like that, but it's not feasible. So, I haven't heard from, I've talked to one person at Cedar Falls Utilities, but, their expertise, absolutely unquestioned. I have total respect for, what they do. But looking at this going forward, this is not, at the end of the day, going to be a advantageous project, not for Cedar Falls, not for Cedar Falls Utilities. They really need to start literally leaning into renewables and the ability to actually make renewables firm. And you do that through energy storage. And you get there with a little bit of natural gas as a bridge. The beautiful thing is you can do this over time because prices are getting lower. They are declining. It is getting cheaper. This isn't something that's going to get more expensive, which actually natural gas likely will. It takes a feedstock, natural gas. It has to be fracked, it has to be transported, it has to be burned. So for a really 21st century energy system, what they're proposing is not it. And as far as climate change, well, this isn't the forum to actually debate that, but if you are a gardener, take a look at the USDA plant hardiness map and tell me if the map today matches the map from 1990, and you'll see that it doesn't. All right? Thank you. And I would like to hear a little more from Cedar Falls Utilities, since I am that neighbor.
Thank you. Name and address for the record, please.
Sure. David Grant, 2010 Clay Street. I just want to kind of underscore a little bit of what Nathan said. I think that it's a great job focusing on the Viking utility plant. The question before you, though, is really zoning. And so this is a great PR job to really have us focused on energy and the energy needs of CFU, which are real, and they're there, but it really is about what's the best use for this land. I also want to keep not only your eye on that, but as a technical communicator expert and someone who works with energy experts and planning for things, part of what this, I think, comes down to is not whether this energy plant is the best use for it or not. It really is about, I think, what Nathan said about being a good neighbor. And we haven't seen that from CFU. We haven't seen whether or not the actual neighborliness of saying, hey, we want to use this land has been thoroughly vetted. And I said, even at Octopus, I said, I know it's expensive for CFU to go out and to talk to neighbors and to talk to people who suddenly are alarmed because they didn't know this thing was coming in and now they're upset. And then CFU turns around like, well, we've been talking about it for 15 years. It's like, yeah, 15 years ago was when they should have been out with all the resources they have at their disposal, knocking on doors, talking to people and say, hey, what is best for us as a community? Can we really come together? But then once the barn door is closed, suddenly then people find out about stuff and then they react like this. And so I think that that's part of why we have so much going on here is this question of why didn't people know sooner? Why is it that all these experts are suddenly deciding the fate of what somebody wants to do with their children in their backyard and how they want to live their life. So I think that has to be part of it, and I think that would be the time to really kind of bring in together the community as a whole, rather than just piecemeal it out and try to get one thing through at a time in order to meet some pre-given objective. So I'll just leave it at that, and I won't talk about climate denialism, which is real. So thank you.
Thank you.
Hello. I'm Amanda Stalker. I'm at 5324 Red Oak Lane in the Arbors, which is right next to the industrial park. I wasn't planning on speaking tonight, so sorry in advance. My biggest concern, I think, though, is why we think the power plant just needs to be located in the future center of town. Power plants are usually located outside of city centers and often in remote industrial areas. And while proximity to users can help reduce energy loss in transmission, as was presented earlier, power plants are traditionally sited away from dense population centers due to safety, land use, and environmental regulations. I did not grow up here, but I have lived a few places in my lifetime, and I've been here for 8 years, and it's honestly never made much sense to me that our community health center is across the street from our utilities. It leaves quite an odd feeling when you are going to go run on a treadmill or lift weights to take care of your body, and then looming over you is a big smokestack. I've always chalked it up to, well, that thing's been here since the dawn of days, and they didn't know how bad these things were when it was built, but now we know better. We know living next to a power plant affects our health in more than one way, and it's kind of beyond my wildest dreams that we're proposing to build another power plant right in the future center of Cedar Falls. History is wanting to repeat itself, and we should be learning from history, learning from those things, and using that knowledge as power. We should be placing a power plant somewhere more geographically responsible, where it's not around a highly dense area of single-family homes and an elementary school. We can eat right, we can exercise, recycle, plant trees and pollinator gardens until we're blue in the face, but it honestly doesn't really matter until we start holding our cities and corporate America to the same high standard that we all as individuals are being held to and pressured to being held to. I don't think anyone here has any malicious intent. I totally understand the power plant, the aging infrastructure, all of those things, but I think that we just need to have some accountability. We only have one Earth. We only have so much clean air, water, and land, and we need to be thinking about future generations and the future health of our citizens as well. So maybe a little bit more money needs to be spent, maybe a little bit more infrastructure needs to be developed so that we can be building a power plant in a more responsible location. Thank you.
Thank you. Come on up, name and address for the record, please.
Hi, my name is Jerry Den Hartog. I live at 2911 West 3rd Street here in Cedar Falls. This is probably a question more for Susan. I was just curious if CFU has any kind of transition plan that might involve these, battery storage units, which everything I've read, they're growing by leaps and bounds, the technology's improving. Like 10 years from now when, who knows, maybe these things, cities across the country will be converting to these things en masse. Are we going to be able to do that then? Or are we pretty much stuck with, a natural gas plant if indeed that is built?
So what we'll do, we'll take all the comments and we'll have all the questions and we'll definitely get time for responses. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Amber Porter, 2125 Brookwood Drive. I just have a question about the 38.25 acres and how that's decided that that needs to be the size of the lot. I know they say they need room to expand and stuff, but just like 3 months ago, they were talking about selling around 10 of the acres. And I know they ultimately said no to that for, I'm not sure why. We don't know much about any of that. So I guess I want to know if they're actually, even in the future, planning to use, like if the location was to be somewhere else, does it also need 38 acres? Or how much of these 38 acres are needed for the proposed plans currently? And then just about how they came up with the size of the lot. But yeah, that's it. Thanks.
Thank you. Sir. Anyone else from the public? Yep. Come on up, please.
Hello, I'm Brana Janah, 1119 Maplewood Drive. I just kind of wanted to comment on, during that presentation, Ms. Abernathy was talking a lot about public involvement, involving the neighbors and stuff like that. And I want to say, at these past 2 meetings, there have been several people coming forward saying, I didn't know about this, we weren't involved in this, and several people saying we don't want a natural gas plant, or if there is to be a natural gas plant, we want, you know, a plan to involve renewables in that and actually see what is going to happen in the future. I think that you guys are in a really good position right now to kind of hold this up and say, you know, you need to do a little more public planning and do your homework in the community before this actually goes forward.
Thank you. Hello.
Hello, my name is Angela Townsend. I live at 2403 West Ridgeway Avenue. You may know that is the south and west border of Cedar Falls. I look right at the industrial park on both my west and north sides. The comments about things being planned without us knowing it, I wasn't aware that, you know, and I'm not very involved with the politics of Cedar Falls, but I wasn't aware they're putting the city municipal building behind me when it was built, but they're a fine neighbor. I can look at the Pepsi plant. I can look at and watch other neighbors in the as the industrial park grows, and I think that that is part of growth. That is part of considering our city a good city and a good place to live. And I am in favor of having CFU having a secure electrical grid for us. My property is 100% electrical. I try to use groundwater heat, and so that is very important to keep my pump running. That's how I keep my energy going. And I have a well, so that's the only way I'm going to get water. So I think having secure energy in our grid is very important, and I think CFU has been very thoughtful about this process, and I'm in favor of them being my neighbor.
Thank you. Hello.
Hi, I'm Deb Eel from 4219 East Park Road. I'm on the CFU Board of Trustees. I have a letter here from a resident, if I could read that for you. It's from Stevie from 327 Balboa. He had a conflict tonight and asked if I would read his comments. Commissioners, I received the following from one of our citizens, and I want to share it with you directly. And Steve's quote is as follows: I've lived in Cedar Falls for decades. My home runs entirely on electricity, heated and cooled by a ground source heat pump with Energy Star windows and a freshly insulated attic. Cedar Falls Utilities made every one of those choices possible: the energy audit, the rebate programs, the reliable service, and today 61% of my power comes from Iowa wind. I also bike and walk extensively on the Cedar Prairie Trail. I led the effort to build this trail 40 years ago on a rail line that once serviced Streeter Station. CFU supported the project by donating the land and leading the fundraising for the first phase. The first trail in Cedar Falls history exists because of this utility. That's environmental stewardship quietly delivered long before it was fashionable. So I think I've earned the right to say this. I am as green as it gets in the Cedar Valley, and I'm asking you to approve this rezoning. The grid is under growing pressure. Aging power plants are retiring faster than replacements are being built. Data centers are multiplying. Severe weather is intensifying. Cyber attacks are a documented threat. Cedar Falls cannot afford to be stranded in the cold, literally, when the next polar vortex hits and the MISO grid goes down. Battery storage has its place, smoothing short-term fluctuations and bridging brief outages, but no utility anywhere has installed batteries as long-term power backup because after 4 hours they are empty, and in sub-zero cold with the grid down, they cannot recharge. That is not a plan, that is a gamble with people's lives. CFU has spent nearly a decade on this. The engines are ordered, and once this rezoning is approved and construction begins, Cedar Falls will have firm, reliable generation that runs for days when everything else fails. The train has left the station. Please don't pull the emergency brake now. Vote yes on the rezoning. And I thank you on Steve's behalf.
Thank you.
Hello. My name is Kamyar in Cheyenne, 1703 Washington. I think, I don't think anybody's questioning Cedar Falls Utilities' expertise and planning. I guess what it comes down to is we are bringing, as planning health, public health is a great kind of element of planning and well-being of the community. I just have a hard time thinking that we're allowing and emitting volatile organic compounds, air pollution that'll come from any combustion of any kind of combustion, very near a residential, very near a school. To me, there's something wrong with this. And as I look around, we heard a lot about solar and wind is, variable and you can't rely on it. Other communities are investing in this. I just talked with Ames just this morning. I talked with them. I asked them, why are you have purchased 45 megawatts of wind from a power purchase agreement? And they said, our city council set a strong climate goal to meet that, and we're going to do it. So that's all I'm saying is, and the planning and zoning meeting maybe is not the place to have those, but we haven't, as a community, we have not had conversations about options. So we heard the vision of Cedar Falls Utilities, and I'm very respectful of that. But we didn't hear another wind company, a solar company, coming and saying, here's how it would work with batteries, etc. We would learn together as a community if we did that. We would learn a lot, just like we learned today from Cedar Falls Utilities about challenges. I'm not saying, nobody is saying it's all going to be renewable, we're not going to have anything, but there's a big difference of having a backup gas plant than replacing aging infrastructure with another polluting plant. That's what bothers me about this, that I think Cedar Falls could do more. Gas, if we're talking gas, we got to look at the entire life cycle of natural gas. It's nasty. Yes, at the burning point, it's cleaner than coal, but its extraction is destroying communities across our country. How can we say we want to have affordable, reliable, but beating down other communities? That I have big problems with. What about, so we hear about reliability imperative, right? It's got to be on, we got to have everything running. But what about climate imperative? How about the stability of climate? Another burning carbon fuel. while we have alternatives. I've always told Cedar Falls leadership, I'm fine with a gas plant as long as we have a lot of other renewable options we've shown we've committed to. 61% from MISO is not Cedar Falls capacity. Cedar Falls, we need to show we're proud of the 61% because others invested in it. We need to invest in it too to increase that percentage. There is work to do. It's not easy, but I'm bothered that a wonderful city is investing in a gas plant without, it's not a small plant. We haven't shown we have invested in renewables. That's all. I just want to know, I'm bothered that we're talking about rezoning so that we can put a polluting plant in there. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else from the public would like to speak to this item tonight? I'm not seeing anyone. I do believe there were several questions for CFU, and then I think CFU kind of wanted the opportunity to answer some of those, if you'd like, as the petitioner.
Thank you. I think a lot of the questions revolved around why aren't we doing batteries, why aren't we doing more renewables? So I have a couple of comments on that. Without going into all the details, I can tell you that we don't agree with Mr. Nebby's economic analysis. I'm not going to get into all the whys, but we could debate that all day long. But there's absolutely doesn't help us. Batteries, wind, solar is no help when we have an extended winter storm like Winter Storm Fern, when we have 40 hours of absolutely no wind. You can't buy enough wind on the grid to help with that kind of scenario. Renewables are also not without their own environmental concerns. If we want to go into that rabbit hole of the mining practices in other countries with child labor, and then what do you do with these batteries when they are end of life, and what do you do with this stranded asset? What do you do with the wind turbines when they're end of life? This is not a zero-sum game here with renewables. They have their own aspects of impact on our environment. It seems like we're all okay with that as long as it's happening in other countries or with other people's children. We don't care about batteries if that's happening there. Well, if we're talking globally, we have to look at this logically, and the fact remains that batteries are not technologically helpful right now. 4 hours of battery capacity doesn't do anything for us when we need reliable local control of our power. So we're open to a transition to more renewables and batteries when it's commercially viable, when the technology advances. Just because we're trying to buy 37 megawatts of these 2 engines at Viking Energy Center doesn't lock us into that forever. Like I said, they can be modified for more renewable fuels in the future. There was a question about the 38 acres and why we needed all that. Absolutely. Dare I say nuclear. When nuclear, which is very, very clean, becomes more viable, absolutely, we could put nuclear on that site. We could put solar and batteries on that site when it makes sense. But right now, we're trying to replace aging, very inefficient, old infrastructure with something that's more efficient and modulates with renewables very quickly. I'm deeply concerned with some of the arguments that are brought up, like it's your job to hold up this project, and that was stated by, I'm just going to call out, an intern with an out-of-state environmental group. That's deeply concerning. The Zoning Commission needs to decide what is properly zoned for this property, and whether we put nuclear or gas or coal or wind or solar or batteries or whatever happens on this lot, that's for the Iowa Utilities Commission, a different regulatory agency that decides what is appropriate for generation. They're the ones charged with that decision. There was reference to Ames City Council and how they've made decisions for their community. I'll also point out that our Board of Trustees is like that City Council. It's made up of citizens here in Cedar Falls who is the governing body for our utility operation. There was questions about why we aren't investing in wind, and we've already talked about that. Wind is of no help to us with capacity. We by definition can't build wind in Cedar Falls. We are near an airport, and there's not enough real estate to provide that kind of energy and capacity that we need for our community. I had a laundry list of questions of things I wanted to respond to. I don't know if I answered all of them or if you have additional questions, but I can't emphasize enough that we are, as somebody already stated, we are gambling with people's lives. If we don't build this, we're going to continue to have aging infrastructure that has more emissions, and it's just not practical to rely on fully renewables for the foreseeable future. But we're willing to look at that in the future when it becomes something that makes sense.
Thank you. It's still public comment, so sure, come on up.
It's the double dipping and the final closing. Again, I just want to reiterate the technical communication aspect here. When I work with subject matter experts, part of the thing that we're really saying is that the subject matter experts can't kind of sit behind this veneer of expertise and, oh gosh, we did something bad, we'll do better in the future. Do better now. Have these conversations now. They should have been done 10, 20 years ago, but we can't go back in time. And I don't think anybody is saying no gas right now, or that we don't need this mix of things, that we don't have an aging infrastructure. Nobody's saying that. Nobody has ever said that. The question is, what are we going to do now, and can we not hold up the project, but hold CFU accountable to the people? That's really kind of what I think is what I heard. And so I think that that's what we need to move forward with as a community. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there any other public comment at all? Otherwise, to bring back to the commission, what we would need first would be a motion and a second from the commission, and then we could have discussion on it.
I would move to approve.
Second.
Okay. So any comment, questions, discussion?
I think this makes sense. I understand the argument on more renewables, but I don't think we're there. They've shown us the stats that we can't do this all on renewable energy, and that we need this natural gas-powered plant. It's way more efficient than the aging infrastructure. So, like I said, every aspect of this makes sense to me. So.
Yeah, I think we need to remember, like many people pointed out today, we're taking this one step at a time. The first step is the zoning, and that's what the focus is right now. So.
I still am a little bit challenged with so many people coming and saying that they haven't been heard and they haven't been part of the conversation. And so I'm struggling a little bit. I trust CFU. I trust that they have my best interest at heart as a Cedar Falls resident, but I just think we need to have some more community conversations before we make a final decision.
Can I ask a question? What is the sunset timeline for existing generation? Like thinking of the community as a whole, when do we transition from these less efficient, more polluting generation facilities to the cleaner ones?
And I'll piggyback on that. What is the expected duty cycle of the new engines that would be going in? Projected. What would be the projected duty cycle of this plant that we're putting in? How long are they going to run?
Like on a yearly basis, or just like forever?
Hours per day. Hours per day, whatever. Like.
Are you talking about the lifespan of the plant itself?
No, not the lifespan. Like, how often are they going to be running? 24/7, or yeah, that's kind of what I was asking.
Yeah. Okay. All right. So what is our plan for the aging infrastructure? So I can tell you right now, we don't have any options if this project doesn't go forward. So we're handcuffed to what we have right now because we absolutely need that capacity. So if we have the opportunity to move forward with this project, we'll be able to retire Streeter Units 6 and 7 when that makes sense. But right now, we don't have that choice. When there's repairs that are needed, we have to spend a lot of money to keep them up and running. So I'm not, I don't have like January of 2030, we're decommissioning those. I can't answer that right now because there's so much in flux here that we're discussing that, but I can tell you that if we're allowed to move forward with the Viking Energy Center, we will have those options. We'll be able to logically decommission those when, for example, when there's too many repairs that are too costly on unit number 6, we'll be able to decommission that, and maybe it makes sense to invest in a different generation. But right now, we're handcuffed. They're here, and they cost a lot of money.
Is this a megawatt for megawatt, like almost replacement? So we bring those new plants in to kind of.
Yep. So units 6 and 7 are 35 and 16 megawatts, so that's 51 megawatts. So these 2 engines are 37 megawatts, and we'll be able to add more engines to replace that. As far as how often they will run, if you really want to know, I can call Tom Reese up here and he can give you some education on that. You saw from my graph how they could run numerous times a day when there's absolutely no wind or when the prices are spiking, but on an average basis, I know he's got a lot better information.
Thought I'd ask a nerd question for the nerds.
Tom Reese, Cedar Falls Utilities Viking Energy Center Project Manager. So we went back several years and looked at the MISO local marginal pricing. There's a day-ahead price, and then there's a real time that's settled every 5 minutes. And our projection is we've looked at many other plants that have similar technology that they've installed, and our analysis shows we expect out of 8,760 hours a year, these are going to run 2,000 to 3,000 hours is what we estimate. They're only going to run when we need them. There's a lot of wind and solar that comes into our community from the grid. We're not, like Susan said, we can't take advantage of the production tax credits and the investment tax credits. But our contribution is we've invested in the transmission system heavily to bring that kind of stuff in. And we feel that this dovetails nicely with that technology. That's our contribution to it. So the Mid-Americans of the world are set up to build that. Why don't we build more of it? It was a question. At that point, you're not offsetting any emissions at that point. You're offsetting more of renewable energy. The other day when the wind was really blowing, we had negative pricing on the grid, negative pricing. If we had more of that in town, that would have been even more negative pricing, which means you have to pay to have it taken away. There's only so much that the transmission system can handle, okay? So you have to have spinning reserves, power plants online, ready to pick up when the wind and the sun aren't there. Okay, so this type of generation helps eliminate the need for that spinning reserve that's there. You curtail the wind and the solar less, because that does get curtailed most days, and then you allow more of that renewable energy to make it to market. And these things just dovetail nicely with that curve that Susan had showed you earlier. So I don't know if what I said raised more questions, but about 2,000 to 3,000 hours a year is what we're expecting.
Okay, thanks.
Anything else I can add?
I guess, in my opinion, we can talk about the energy conversation is a little bit tough to swallow, I think, just because I don't know if this is the right setting for that. But I think we are the right setting to talk about where this plant is potentially going. And I think what I've heard from people, from the public say is, why is this located in this exact spot? And I know we broadly touched on it, but maybe what could be helpful is we heard that it's not, wouldn't be financially viable to move it outside of town, for instance, which might be some concern. Is there information that you could maybe provide for us that would say, we looked at these different locations outside of neighborhood homes and it was adding, $50 million to the project, or creating this much more infrastructure to the project? I know that's a very difficult question to answer, but I feel like that's what a lot of people are saying. I feel like I heard today that everyone understands this needs to happen, and how it's going to happen is a very complex question that I don't know that we're capable of answering or helping or whatever, but I do think we can at least help answer that.
Right. Well, what Susan had provided earlier was our analysis when we looked at the other locations, because we do require natural gas. You have to have high voltage transmission lines. You have to have distribution capability. When we looked at all those locations, yes, we looked at the costs of those things. To run a natural gas line is very, very expensive. This is the minimal length that we have to run from our gas border station on 27th Street. I don't know what else we can, Susan, if you have any more, but if you're asking for numbers, we had a feasibility study done by DGR Engineering, and they helped us look at all this, and they identified the 2 sites that made the most practical sense. And that was our gas turbine location on 27th Street and near our Viking substation. And so then from there, we did further analysis, and we said it makes more sense to put it in the industrial park next to our Viking substation, because it minimized all the other, the natural gas line extension that we have to do, the high voltage lines that we need, and the distribution system that we're trying to expand down in that part of the city as well. The natural gas side of it, in that part, we wanted to extend our natural gas down there anyway, so it kind of killed 2 birds with 1 stone there, so to say. So I don't know if that answered what you were looking for.
Yeah, I mean, I think you guys have done a lot of the legwork. I just think, the public likes to understand what that is, understanding that there was a feasibility study, this was looked at, like I said, information on numbers, I don't know.
And we did that. Someone mentioned about it was in the $65 million range, and now they say it's higher at 80, and that's correct, because when you look at all the building going on, and the construction costs are going up all the time. So when you reforecast things, and that's why we got permission from our board to bond up to $80 million for this, and prices go up over the years. So the initial feasibility is what that came back as.
Thank you.
Thank you. So from my seat, I think my thoughts on this are, I would love it to be as much renewable energy as we could possibly get. I think pretty much everyone in this room, thinks that too. I don't think we're at a spot right now where that is necessarily feasible for the community. So I understand where CFU is coming from. I think the location of it's always going to be near someone. And it is unfortunate that it's near any neighbors, really, but Cedar Falls is not, thousands of square miles across. So where this is, it's relatively minimal compared to a lot of other areas I think they could look at. And you'd wish you'd have a solution that could fit every single need in the community. I think this is a good plan. I appreciate the energy and the thought and the planning that CFU has put into it, and all the information as well.
I second that. I think everybody has had a very reasoned approach and discussion here tonight, and I really appreciate it. I think maybe some of the takeaways here, there are people who felt like they weren't included and they weren't heard at this point. So here we stand. We can't go back in time. Looking ahead, if this passes, if we bring in this technology and start to look at that 2050 of zero and how we're going to get there, that's not very far away. And the decisions that we make, like if you decide you're going to build a nuclear power plant out there, well, we probably had to make that decision 10 years ago if we're going to get one built by 2050. So taking the lessons learned from this experience for the community and to make sure that the next move is we're not sitting here again with angry people that aren't heard. And I don't know necessarily how we do that. I'm not saying that people didn't do their best effort to get to that. Yeah, I think we can all just, as a community, keep having these conversations. They've been very good for us, I think.
Any other comment or conversation from the commission? If not, we do have a motion and a second on the table, so this would require a roll call vote, please.
Okay, Fisher?
Aye.
Hartley?
Aye.
Johnson?
Aye.
Koger?
Aye.
Moser?
Nay.
Stallnaker?
Aye.
Watkins?
Aye.
Okay, that motion carries.
Okay. That will go on to City Council.
Okay, so just
And then-
one moment. So that would have been,
That was
you had
for the-
two votes, one for the land use map amendment and then one for the rezoning. You intend that to be for the rezoning or the land use map amendment?
That was for land use map amendment.
Okay.
So do we have 3 votes total? Because we'll have to do the master plan.
Yes, and I have a few slides on that after. I just thought we should take these two
So are
votes
these 2
first.
separate votes?
Yeah.
Okay. My
So a
apologies.
separate vote on then the rezoning.
Yep, so then,
So I'll take a
We
roll
have-
call vote on that?
yes.
Okay. Fisher?
Aye.
Hartley?
Aye.
Johnson?
Aye.
Koger?
Aye.
Moser?
Nay.
Stallnaker?
Aye.
Watkins?
Aye.
Okay. Both of those carry then.
Okay, so those will go on to City Council. So then, next up on old business is related, an amendment to the M1P master plan for West Viking Road Industrial Park to acknowledge the site proposed for rezoning to public.
Okay. So this land is in the master planned area of the city's industrial park. That master planned area has, when it was subdivided, has deed of dedication and includes a lot of information about what the expectations are for landscaping, for the character of the buildings, and a lot of information about buffering from neighboring properties. So all of that will remain because it is part of that subdivision for the industrial park. So I just wanted to make that clear. But along with this, that master plan, you'll see up in the screen, what we're suggesting then is if the rezoning and the land use map amendment are to be improved, we should really acknowledge the public utilities use that's in the master planned area. So what you see up on the screen is that the industrial park with the site identified in pink there for public utilities. So that would be a change to the master plan. So since the commission did recommend approval on the change to the rezoning and the land use map amendment, staff does recommend approval of the master plan amendment to the West Viking Road Industrial Park. Yeah, so the other note here is just that it's contingent on the other items being adopted.
Thank you. As we bring it to the commission for staff questions, would you mind going back to the previous slide for me?
Sure.
I just want to make sure I understand, or if it's not important. So we're doing the 38 acres or the 45? Because is the purple that I'm seeing above the red, is that already public? Or?
It's not part of the master planned area.
Okay.
You can see the utility, I can't really point to it here with my cursor, but it's you can see the utility substation there kind of in the white box that's to the west of the pink area. That's not in part of the industrial park. So it's not a part of the master plan.
That's why it's not. Got it. Thank you. Are there any other questions for staff from the commission? Is there anyone from the public who would like to speak to this specific item tonight?
I'd like to say one.
Come on up, please. Just name and address for the record, please.
Nathan Debbie, 2027 South Union Road. When you look at the map, we're the ones that are right there, okay? I want to emphasize that, which is one of the problems that I had when Ms. Abernathy essentially said that they had talked to the neighbors. No, they hadn't. I'm hoping that now maybe they will, because, I do have some ideas as to something that, in fact, maybe we could work on together. But until, for instance, she and others at Cedar Falls Utilities actually do some outreach, I don't know what I can do. We have been there 45 years. We have tried to do something that is actually very special environmentally, both educationally as well as looking at trying to actually reconstruct a part of Iowa that has been nearly completely destroyed. Now, as I said, I'm not necessarily against the park, but I guess what really is at this point really bothering me is when I hear somebody say that and I know that that's not true, especially since we're the most affected. And we have had dealings with Cedar Falls Utilities before. It didn't go well. That's why I've always said they're kind of arrogant, and they are. And I think that's been proved tonight. But I would really like to work with them. And I think that there are some things that actually we could do that are constructive. And as far as our place is concerned, right now we're kind of at a lull because I have a father and a mother who has Alzheimer's. And there are a whole lot of other things going on. But it's going to be an educational site once again. Bringing in people from Cedar Falls, bringing in people from Blackhawk County, as it always was before. So my question is, what is Cedar Falls Utilities actually willing to actually do? What kind of communication are they going to have? Am I actually going to hear from it, or are they just going to come in front of the, the city council, zoning and planning, and say, oh yeah, we've talked to everybody? Wow. I hope that maybe we can have some communication. Maybe we might be able to talk about things like Milwaukee forests and whatnot that actually will help to create actually a place that is not just attractive, but ecologically shows a little foresight. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else from the public who would like to speak to this item tonight? So for commission discussion, we would just need a motion and a second.
I would move to approve.
I'll second.
Okay, motion and a second. Any discussion, or pretty tied in with the last one, so.
Okay. Fisher.
Aye.
Hartley.
Aye.
Johnson.
Aye.
Coker.
Aye.
Mosier.
Nay.
Stallnaker.
Aye.
Watkins.
Aye.
Okay, that motion carries.
Thank you. Next on old business is zoning text amendments for trailer parking. I think we have a presentation on this.
Good evening. Give me 1 second. Okay. So I'm bringing back the text amendment trailer parking. I know that we talked about this a while back. We did delay, and as I give my presentation reminding you of what this is about, I'll explain why we delayed. So right now, our current enforcement for, hold on 1 second. Okay, making sure I didn't miss a slide. So right now, we are enforcing as we have issues, but the concern is all parking of trailers has to be on a hard surface. So we get complaints from both sides, people who would like to park their trailer in their yard, it's just a small piece, why do I have to add concrete? And then we also have the complaints about people should be parking because that's what the ordinance is. So this was brought forth by council to review what our options were, to provide options for citizens to use their yard in other ways than just having the concrete. Our enforcement right now, we do have some leniency when it is in a backyard and can't be seen, but right now it is a complaint-based approach. a little more on those complaints. This was done when I brought it to council before, but we had 532 complaints related to parking on grass since January of 2024. They were 89% of those were citizen complaints, and the rest were initiated by city staff. Those initiated by city staff really came down to if we were going to house A and its neighbor house B had the same situation, we couldn't enforce on one and not the other. I would like to note again that only 442 properties, 90 of them were repeat complaints, so all 532 weren't individual properties. So our proposed solution, after we went to council, we talked about various different options, and this is the one that they recommended that we bring forward. So parking of any motor vehicle must be on a hard surface that meets all the requirements of the zoning ordinance, except for motor vehicle may be parked on an unimproved surface for up to 48 hours in any consecutive 30 days. This was really brought forward, that exception, because we know people need to use their yards. They're parked on their lawn as they are doing yard work, moving in and out. So we wanted to make sure that we didn't have to enforce every single moment, because we do get a lot of complaints when you know people are simply trying to do their day-to-day business. And then this is the main change. So parking of non-motorized vehicles must be on a hard surface that meets all requirements of Chapter 26, except on an unimproved side yard, one non-motor vehicle smaller than 5 by 8 may be parked on an unimproved surface within the side yard. The change that we made since the last time you saw this is that parking in side yards that have frontage on a street, such as a corner lot, is not allowed unless screened from public view. Unimproved rear yard, one non-motor vehicle smaller than 7 by 12 may be parked on an unimproved surface within the rear yard. And then this is the change from last time. Parking in a rear yard that have frontage on a street is not allowed unless screened, again a corner lot. A double fronting lot, one non-motor vehicle smaller than 7 by 12 may be parked on an unapproved surface in the front yard located in the rear of the principal building, provided it is screened from public view. And again, these do not apply to kayaks, canoes, bicycles. We do get calls on those too, thinking they should also be on paved surfaces. So a little more description on that changes that we had from last time. So you'll see the corner lot. The gray area is the front yard. The darker gray with the number, that's the actual structure, and then the dark green is the side yard. And if it is parked on that street side where the red is, it would require screening. In the rear yard, it's not, you don't have to screen it if it's parked anywhere in your backyard. And the reason we did this is there is some verbiage in, is it in SUDAS? There's some verbiage that it is within plain sight, and so that 30 feet, if it's parked back from that street, it's considered, I'm sorry, can you help with the part?
Yeah, we created, you'll see in the code amendments, we created a definition of within public view, so that portion that you see with the asterisks there in the backyard there, that's area that we didn't want you to have to screen. If you didn't have a fence up by the street or some landscaping or something, it was far enough back, we won't consider that within public view. So basically, you can park anywhere in that area with the asterisks in the rear yard. But if you're within 30 feet of the public street right away, then you probably need to put up a fence or some sort of screening so that, you can if you want to put your trailer in that particular location. Now, I'm guessing that a lot of people will want to kind of tuck it behind the house, but we wanted to make sure that it wasn't just being parked right next to the sidewalk with no screening, for example.
So then the double fronting lot is a very similar situation, and an example of this would be on Hudson Road. There are a lot of what people would probably consider their backyard, but in reality it is a double fronting lot, so they do follow the front yard zoning ordinances. So we said that if you wanted to park in that rear side of your front lot, it needed to be screened unless it was that 30 feet back from the public view. So the one motor vehicle or non-motorized vehicle of any size may be temporarily parked on an unapproved surface if it's in use for limited up to 48 hours in any consecutive 30 days. Examples, loading, unloading. Over Easter, I saw a lot of yards where it looked like they had an extended family and they're parking in the yard rather than on the street. And also included, there were some changes to the definitions to update, like Karen was saying, about the clear site or clear view. A couple quick examples. These are two things that would be allowed. They are trailers that are the smaller size. They're in the side yards. This would not be allowed. There were a lot of questions when we talked to council about, well, would a motorhome be allowed? No, it exceeds the allowed size. Now, I was corrected on this one, and it is on a paved surface, so if you know this property, ignore that. But if this was a grass area, it wouldn't be allowed to be parked there. So staff recommends the approval of the ordinance change, and I'd be happy to answer any questions that you have.
Thank you. Any questions for staff?
What defines screening?
Yes.
I'm going to let Karen answer that one.
So I think it's going to be on a case-by-case basis. So if they have a solid fence, for example, and you can't see it, I mean, we're talking about just small little trailers. Of course, if it's in the street side yard, there's a limitation on the height of the fence is only 4 feet tall. So in that case, maybe you need to have some additional landscaping there. So I think when we get a complaint, because these will still be complaint-based, and we go out and we say, okay, we believe that there's landscaping and there's a fence here, basically it's screened from public view. So it is going to be kind of a little bit of a gray area. Sometimes you might need both. Sometimes you might just need one, because if you have a 6-foot solid fence, you probably won't be able to see the trailer. So I hope that's a good enough answer for you, because I think it's going to be a little bit of a judgment call.
And I would like to add, I don't know if we can bring these pictures back up, but we did have a complaint about the examples that I had, and the one on the left, I actually had to drive by this property 3 or 4 times before I found the complaint. So really, it's if you drive by and you notice it, then it's going to be a problem. But if it's tucked away and it's screened and it's not a problem, then that's what we're considering screening.
Can you speak, and so just to refresh my memory, so we're seeing small little trailers here, but there was the other potential example that was more like an RV type trailer. What is all trailers? What about boat trailers, RV trailers, utility trailers, everything?
Yep, it's limited by size. We initially talked about, do we want to limit by type? And we decided that it would be easier to say a size. So if it's a 5x7 and it's an enclosed trailer, that's fine as long as it's that smaller size.
And so then the larger size, I think was 7x12, did I see?
Yep, it's the same thing. As long as it's below that size, and we've had the question of how are we going to enforce that. We're going to have to use our judgment because we can't walk on the property, but if it appears to be larger than that, or we get the ongoing complaints, we'll have to ask the property owner to prove to us that it is the smaller size or the allowed size.
So then I guess thank you. And because then my real question was, so what happens with bigger trailers? What is their standard? Can you just remind us on that? Like about an RV or a big boat?
As long as it is on a paved surface that meets all of the current zoning ordinances.
Paved surface.
So we're not taking away, we're actually helping and adding more options, because you can always park an RV if you meet those zoning ordinances.
Thank you.
And I guess follow up to my screening question, is this required to be permanent screening or can it be temporary?
I think that temporary is a hard answer to give, because like snow fence wouldn't be an approved material and that would be considered temporary, but it's something that's going to hide that trailer for as long as you have it there.
Okay.
I don't know.
Have certain fence requirements on the books, so they still have to meet all the zoning requirements as far as fencing, and if they put in landscaping in addition to it.
It feels like there's other language in the code that speaks to landscape requirements or pool screening and stuff. I mean, how difficult would it be to add a little bit better definition of screening to this language while we're talking about it? Because I could see how we add this and then the discussion is no longer paved, it's now about the screening, and it just becomes a different issue at a different time versus we could say a landscape buffer or a fence that meets the current code, or something like that.
And I appreciate that, because we had that debate ourselves about how we define that, and we didn't want to create an issue for, say, some of those houses that have a larger side yard and they already have a lot of vegetation there. Screening is really a lot of times defined by a fence or very specific vegetation. So if they already have it and you're not going to be able to see it, for like this example that I gave, why are we defining and making them add something if something that they have may not meet the exact definition but solves the problem of screening? So we wanted to make it a little open to interpretation because the whole goal is not to be able to be seen from the road.
Okay. I think even our screening standards now in the code, I think you're always going to have that question, right? Sure. Because we have screening standards now for to screen parking lots. And so people plant shrubs and they're supposed to grow to 3 feet tall and supposed to screen the parking lot. Some of them die and then you have to replace them. So, I mean, just like living plants, you know, it's going to be a little bit of a gray area. And this is such a minor thing that we're talking about here. Very, you know, not everybody has a little trailer that they want to store here, and probably most people are going to want to put it on the side of the house that's away from the street. We're just trying to create some possibility here, and I don't think we can write an ordinance that would be for 100% of the cases, so we're just trying to, based on the extent of what we're trying to regulate here, this is a fairly minor thing, and I think we feel like we're already doing the enforcement here. It's going to be on a complaint basis. This is a small item to take care of.
Sure. Okay. Thank you.
Any other questions for staff? Thank you. This time we would open up for any public comment, if anyone would like to speak to this item at all. Otherwise, we can bring it back to the commission with a move.
I would motion to approve as is.
Second.
All right. Any discussion? Thank you for listening to our questions on it. I know I was curious about a couple of these things, and I do agree that I like that we're trying to be mindful of not being too much of a burden on homeowners, but yet also trying to make it a little bit clearer. Then it's not quite as vague, and if we try and pursue perfection, I think we'll never quite get there. So this gets us a little closer. So that's nice. We have a motion and a second. Roll call vote, please.
Fisher.
Aye.
Hartley.
Aye.
Johnson.
Aye.
Koger.
Aye.
Moser.
Aye.
Stallnaker.
Aye.
Watkins.
Aye.
Okay. That'll go on to council.
Thank you very much. That ends our old business. Are there any commission updates tonight?
I don't have anything for you tonight.
So I would just need a motion to adjourn.
So move.
Second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Aye. Thank you all very much for coming.